Welcome back to the deep dive. If you are joining us, you're probably someone who gets that in today's world, knowledge is valuable, but, well, actionable
The
knowledge.
shortcut.
The shortcut, the blueprint, the strategy that gets you fluent fast, that's priceless. And today, we are providing the ultimate blueprint for rapidly mastering spoken English.
It's such a critical area because, as the experts we analyze confirm, English is.
Hmm.
It's uniquely challenging
Why is that?
because the written word, famously, it often gives you very little indication
Mm.
of how it should actually be pronounced.
Right.
And that disconnect is, I think, the single biggest stumbling block for so many learners.
Mm.
They master the grammar, they can read Shakespeare, but they really struggle to leap confidently into, real-time, effortless speech.
Absolutely. And that gap, that feeling of the words getting stuck between your brain and your mouth, that is as much a psychological thing as it is a linguistic one. The emotional hurdle, that almost paralyzing fear of sounding clumsy or being misunderstood, it's immense. The expert we consulted even used a surprising analogy.
Oh, I love this one.
Right. Comparing the sheer nervousness of speaking a second language to the pressure cooker of dating.
And that analogy just resonates so perfectly because in both situations, you're putting yourself out there. It's a high-stakes, real-time environment.
Totally. Social, professional.
And your success depends on your ability to convey competence and, well, personality and do it quickly. If you stumble over a key word or you have to repeat yourself 3 times,
That kills the flow.
it impacts the entire relationship you're trying to build. So a structured approach, one that moves beyond just memorizing rules, is what removes that paralyzing fear and lets your confidence build, brick by brick.
Our mission today is to give you that exact structure. We've analyzed a stack of source material with 8 core strategies, and they are incredibly practical and action-oriented. We're going to move from the microscopic.
Like how your tongue is moving.
Exactly, all the way to the macroscopic, finding the perfect, diverse practice partners. We are extracting the most powerful and often counterintuitive techniques that bridge that gap between knowing the rules and achieving, well, the holy grail of communication.
Effortless, clear, understandable speech.
That's it.
And the goal for you, the listener, is not just to know what these tips are. It's to understand the deep cognitive and physical reasons why they work.
Right.
We want to convert your abstract goal of fluency into concrete daily tasks that really do guarantee progress.
Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with a strategy that immediately forces us to treat speaking not as a mental exercise, but as something athletic, physical. Sorry. So our first section is built around this kind of revolutionary idea. The pathway to mastering spoken English really begins by focusing on the physical mechanics of sound production.
And.
Mm-hmm.
Fundamentally prioritizing clarity over correctness.
Which is a big one.
A huge one. And this brings us right to tip 1, which is, surprisingly, to analyze and get to know the machinery of English speaking.
The machinery.
We're talking about really analyzing the parts of the body you use every time you speak. Your face, your tongue, your throat, your jaw, all of it.
Okay, now, when I first encountered this advice, my immediate reaction was, why? Why on earth do we need to look at our internal plumbing?
Right.
Can you explain the logic here? If I can hear my mistake, shouldn't I be focusing on training my ear, not my jaw?
That's the common assumption. But the physical approach is so essential because language, when it's spoken, is fundamentally a motor skill.
A motor skill, like playing tennis.
Exactly. If you don't understand which parts of your mouth or throat are producing which sounds, you're basically trying to correct an error blindfolded. You learn to sound incorrectly early on. Let's say you habitually place your tongue too far forward for an English L.
Mm-hmm.
Your muscle structure is wired to repeat that mistake thousands of times a day. To fix that, auditory correction, just listening, isn't enough. You need surgical precision to retrain the actual muscle memory.
So we're targeting the physical root of the phonetic error, not just the sound that comes out at the end.
Precisely. And this leads directly to what the source calls the enhanced mirror technique. This is way more rigorous than just, glancing at yourself while you talk.
Right, not just vanity.
Exactly. The general advice to watch yourself speak is, it's just not enough. The research demands a truly detailed, action-oriented comparison. You need to find a close-up, high-quality video of a respected native speaker, or any speaker whose pronunciation you admire, delivering a short sentence, and it has to be zoomed right in on their mouth.
And the next step, I assume, is to record yourself saying the exact same sentence at the same distance.
At the same distance. The goal is a forensic, side-by-side analysis of all those physical actions.
What are we looking for?
You're looking for subtle, almost invisible differences. How are your lips moving compared to theirs? Are they rounded for an oo sound, or are they spread slightly wide for an e sound? And more critically, you have to track the tongue position.
Ugh.
Most learners never realize the tongue is the primary instrument of clear speech, and its position changes drastically between languages.
I have to pause here because this detail, this hyper-focus on tongue position, it totally transformed my personal experience learning Spanish.
Oh, this is a great story.
The source provides this brilliant anecdote that just perfectly illustrates why listening alone is not enough.
Yes, the source recounted noticing a physical discrepancy when trying to nail the Spanish D sound.
Right, so in standard English, the duh sound, like in data or dog, it's delicate. The tongue tip stays inside your mouth, and it taps lightly on what's called the alveolar ridge, that little bump right behind your front teeth.
It's a very contained sound.
But in the Spanish-speaking community where this expert was living, the local speakers often used a slightly different articulation. They use what was it called? A dentalized stop.
Right, meaning the tongue pushed forward and actually touched the back of the front teeth, sometimes even sticking out slightly past them. Dick.
Exactly. And that tiny physical difference, that slight extension of the tongue, changes the quality of the sound from a crisp English D to a softer Spanish D.
And the epiphany was that no amount of listening would ever reveal that. The sounds were just close enough to be confusing, but the physical mechanism was totally different.
It was only by watching and analyzing the mechanics that the expert finally managed to transform her Spanish pronunciation.
It's the ultimate proof. If you apply that same physical scrutiny to English, watching how the tongue tucks back for R sounds or how the jaw drops for certain vowels, you unlock the muscle memory you need for accurate sound production.
And we can't forget the final physical component mentioned in tip 1.
The analysis of voice quality. This moved the focus from the mouth and tongue down to the throat and chest.
So this is about placement and resonance, right?
Precisely. Different languages use different parts of the vocal tract as their main resonance chamber. English tends to be higher or more forward in the mouth and nasal cavity than, say, German or Russian, which can be lower and more throaty.
So if a learner carries over the voice placement from their native language, maybe something deeper or more guttural,
They'll sound muffled or just unnatural in English no matter how accurate their individual consonants are. You have to actively try to shift where your sound is coming from.
So we're not just listening to sound, we're analyzing the entire biological machine, being hypercritical of our current output and physically mapping the journey to correction. Okay, let's use this insight that speech is a physical skill to pivot to a massive prioritization shift. Let's talk about tip 5.
Tip 5. This is the controversial one, the one that will certainly raise eyebrows among traditional language instructors.
Which is?
Focus on pronunciation over grammar, especially in the early stages.
Okay, I have to push back on this because it feels completely counterintuitive to how language is normally taught. If I speak clearly but with atrocious grammar, won't I just sound like a tourist who memorized a few phrases? Surely grammar is what gives us the nuance we need for professional, high-level communication, right?
That is a very fair objection. And it highlights the difference between academic goals and, well, functional communicative goals. The core rationale the expert lays out is this. Bad grammar habits are much easier to correct later than bad pronunciation habits learned early on.
So pronunciation is physical muscle memory. Grammar is intellectual knowledge.
Exactly. You can correct a mistaken tense usage on a piece of paper with a red pen instantly. But trying to rewire a physical mechanism in your mouth that has been reinforced for years and years, that takes weeks, maybe months of deliberate, sometimes painful practice.
Wow, okay, I'm starting to see the distinction.
Think of it in terms of communicative load. When we speak, the listener's brain is constantly processing the incoming sound stream. If that sound is clear and recognizable, even if the structure is flawed, the listener can use context to quickly fill in the grammar gaps.
They're spending less mental energy on decoding the sounds.
And more effort on processing the meaning.
Okay, so if I say, yesterday I go shop, the listener immediately understands. I mean, yesterday I went to the shop. The grammar is wrong, but the meaning is totally clear.
Precisely. And the research shows it is vastly easier to understand someone with great pronunciation but bad grammar than it is to understand someone with perfect grammar but terrible pronunciation.
Because bad pronunciation can make communication impossible.
It creates a total sound stream blockage. Bad grammar just creates a speed bump. The priority, therefore, has to be clearing the delivery channel first.
It's the efficiency argument, and when we look at the psychological side, which we mentioned earlier, the source really emphasizes the confidence factor here.
Oh, absolutely. Learners who move to English-speaking countries report being far more embarrassed by their pronunciation issues than their grammar errors.
That makes sense.
They feel self-conscious because poor pronunciation instantly signals difficulty to the listener, and it often forces you to repeat yourself. If you sound clear, you feel competent, your anxiety drops, and you want to speak more, which creates this amazing positive reinforcing loop.
So the goal isn't necessarily to achieve a perfect accent, which is often unnecessary and maybe even impossible.
But to achieve speech that is clear and understandable, it's about functional priority. Get the delivery mechanism clear, and then you can polish the intellectual structure later.
What's fascinating here is that we've basically established a hierarchy. If pronunciation relies on muscle training from tip 1,
Right.
and pronunciation is the priority from tip 5, then the most valuable hour a learner can spend, especially at the beginning, is probably not spent studying obscure conjugations, but rather physically watching and mimicking a native speaker's lips and tongue in a mirror.
It sets the bedrock for everything that follows.
That sets a really powerful precedent. We need to focus on the physical and the sound quality first, but we still have that fundamental English problem. The word on the page rarely tells you how it should be voiced.
Exactly.
So now we move into techniques that bridge the gap between that physical awareness and, well, the spelling, the orthography.
And this is where we force the brain to link the written form of English to its spoken sound. This dramatically improves retrieval velocity and overall fluency. Tip 2 is probably the most powerful method for this,
Which is?
combining reading and listening, specifically using the audiobook method.
We've talked about how reading silently in English can actually be detrimental, right? Because if you see the word plow and you decide in your head it rhymes with through.
You're reinforcing a mispronunciation every single time you read it. The sheer inconsistency of English spelling means that relying purely on silent reading builds this phonetic guessing system in your brain, and it's often based on rules from your native language. We need to dismantle that system.
So the practical solution is simple, but it requires consistency. You take a book, ideally one you've already read or want to read, and you read the physical or digital text while you simultaneously listen to the professional audiobook version.
The research suggests using platforms like Audible or similar resources that let you control the speed and loop sections.
And the cognitive benefit is what?
It's immense because you're engaging in simultaneous conditioning. You are forcing the visual input, the spelling, and the auditory input, the correct sound from a native speaker, to meet in your brain at the exact same moment.
It's like a neurological handshake.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
And if you do this repeatedly, your brain creates this robust, reliable database. So the next time you hear that word, you know its spelling, and more importantly, the next time you read that bizarrely spelled word, you bypass the phonetic guessing game entirely.
Because you instantly recall the correct sound.
It is a massive shortcut.
Yeah.
We're moving information out of the slow, deliberate rule decoding part of the brain and into the automaticity centers, the same place that handles walking or typing.
And the beauty of platforms like Audible is you can slow the speed down slightly, right? Maybe 0.9x or 0.8x if you're struggling to keep up.
Or you can loop a really complex paragraph until that sound to symbol link feels rock solid. It's technology being perfectly leveraged to solve a structural linguistic problem.
Okay, that makes perfect sense for linking sound and sight. Now, tip 3 shifts from that integrated practice to more of an active physical conditioning.
Yes, the power of speed reading aloud. This is designed purely to increase the velocity and the flow of your speech.
This is a technique that's often overlooked, right? It sounds like a reading comprehension exercise.
It does, but it's actually a sophisticated exercise for your mouth and brain coordination. It targets 3 specific qualities that are essential for natural speech.
Okay, what are they?
First, fluency, how smoothly you speak.
Yeah.
Second, velocity, how quickly you speak. And third, and this is probably the most important one, connected speech.
Connected speech, how you join one word to the next.
Or one sound to the next. This is often called liaison or SAND. Learners frequently struggle here because they try to articulate every single word perfectly and separately, which just sounds robotic and slow.
Right, they might say, did you go to dot store?
when a native speaker would compress it into something that sounds more like, did you go to the store? Exactly. The classic examples are the reductions. Going to becomes gonna, or you have common glides. For instance, in the phrase, I see him, the final vowel sound of see often glides into the initial sound of him, producing a tiny yai sound, almost like I see him.
In speed reading forces your mouth to make these connections naturally.
It does.
So how does the speed challenge method work in practice?
The method is demanding, but it's simple. You need a suitable text. For general fluency, a 300 to 500 word excerpt from a reputable news source is ideal. It uses standard vocabulary and grammar.
And then you just read it aloud and time yourself.
Read it aloud and time it precisely. So if you read 400 words in, say, 1 minute and 45 seconds, that's your baseline.
Got it.
Then you immediately reread the exact same text, and you try to beat your previous time. The key is to maintain clarity and accuracy while increasing speed. And you repeat this up to 4 times, because the experts suggest that diminishing returns, or frankly, muscle fatigue, tends to set in after that.
This sounds like high-intensity interval training for your mouth muscles.
It is. You are physically forcing the articulators, your tongue, your lips, your jaw, to keep up with a faster processing speed. You're overriding that internal sensor that wants to meticulously enunciate every single word.
You're training your mouth to just glide over the connections between words?
Which is the definition of natural connected speech. It builds verbal agility and reinforces those smooth transitions.
And for someone who wants expert feedback, the source suggests recording the speed reading session.
Yes, especially the fastest one.
And sending it to a language instructor, or using it as a starting point for a discussion in a lesson.
And that transforms it from just a personal drill into a diagnostic tool. The instructor can analyze precisely where you're struggling with linking, where your rhythm breaks down, or where you're sticking. It provides highly focused correction based on tangible data.
So tip 2 links the brain and the eye. Tip 3 trains the pace and the physical flow of the sound output.
Exactly.
We've established the physical groundwork, and we've integrated the sound with the spelling. Now we need to shift our focus inward.
Inside the mind.
Right, preparing the internal cognitive structure so the words flow without hesitation. This is where mental rehearsal becomes absolutely key.
And this brings us to tip 4, preparing stories and monologues in advance.
Yeah.
Now, this might sound a bit like cheating, but the source notes that this strategy is critical even for highly proficient native speakers.
Which means it's indispensable for learners.
Absolutely.
So why is this so crucial? I'm guessing it's related to that cognitive load we talked about.
Precisely. When you're speaking a sight and language, your brain is already dedicating massive resources to grammar retrieval, vocabulary selection, pronunciation management, and actively listening to your partner.
It's juggling a lot.
A ton. So if you then force yourself to invent witty, engaging content on the spot, the system is guaranteed to overload. And that leads to hesitation, stammering, and anxiety.
So this is the up-your-sleeve strategy, having perfectly rehearsed conversational segments ready to deploy at a moment's notice.
It's preparation against conversational silence, or that dreaded, I don't know what to say moment.
So what should you pre-script?
You start with the absolute basics you are asked daily. Polished, nuanced answers to, what do you do for a living? Where do you come from? And a professional elevator pitch if you work in a corporate environment. The answers have to be fluent, not just grammatically correct.
And for more advanced learners, the script should move beyond just utility and into social engagement.
Yes. You need to prepare 2 or 3 funny, interesting, or memorable stories for social situations, like dinner parties or networking events. The kind of anecdotes that make you a great conversationalist.
And these stories have to be rehearsed and polished until you know the vocabulary, the rhythm, the cadence by heart.
So when the opportunity arises, you aren't translating or formulating. You are confidently performing a pre-recorded segment of excellent, fluent speech.
I found the expert's personal anecdote about using the strategy while dating to be highly relatable, especially for dealing with nervousness.
Oh, it was perfect. She spoke about how daunting first dates can be. In a situation where she felt nervous, she would deliberately go into the date with her best stories prepared, structured around different topics, ready to save her from awkward silence. It was her safety net.
That's brilliant. I remember sweating bullets before certain high-pressure social events, but knowing I had 3 killer stories about a ridiculous travel mishap or a funny work situation was my secret weapon.
It allowed you to focus on listening, right?
Totally. Knowing that when it was my turn, I had gold ready to go.
And this leads to the ultimate insight from the source. The expert noted that when she met her now husband, she had all these prepared scripts and
It all went out the window.
because the conversation just flowed effortlessly. The key takeaway isn't that you use the scripts, but that the preparation builds the base confidence required to allow natural conversation to happen.
So if you know you can perform, you're relaxed enough that you don't have to.
Preparation minimizes anxiety, allowing real connection to emerge.
That shifts the entire focus from content delivery to your mental state. Okay, moving even deeper internally. Tip 6 is perhaps the true fluency leap.
This is a big one. Thinking in English, the internal narrator.
To speak English fluently without even thinking, the true benchmark of mastery, you have to train yourself to think in English.
Because if you're translating every thought from your native language into English before you speak, you will always be slow. You'll always be hesitant.
The source acknowledges that for some people, this cognitive switch happens organically after enough exposure. But for others, it's a near impossible jump.
Which means they have to actively force the neurological pathways to change.
So what's the mechanism they suggest?
It's ingenious. You create an internal English narrator. The advice is to choose a voice you like. The expert mentioned Emma Watson is a popular choice, providing both familiarity and a positive phonetic model to act as the narrator in your head.
That gives you a clear target for accent and intonation.
Exactly.
And what is the specific daily action required to engage this narrator?
For a set period of time, maybe just 20 minutes during your morning commute or an hour while you're cleaning, the narrator verbalizes everything you are doing, including your feelings and observations.
And the thoughts have to be mundane, right?
So mundane. I am washing the dishes. I see the red cup. I must put the spoon on the table. Why is it raining today?
This daily practice systematically forces the brain out of that native language translation loop.
Instead of native thought translation to English production.
You're training the direct path, thought in English, production in English.
Yeah.
You're essentially shifting your cognitive operating system.
And the research points to clear, powerful indicators of deep fluency when this practice is consistent. The first and most important is automatic thought in English. The internal narrator just takes over naturally.
And the second sign is one that always fascinated me. Starting to dream in the second language.
That is the ultimate indicator that the language has penetrated your subconscious architecture. It means your brain is processing deep, emotional, and illogical content directly in the target language.
The expert confirmed this, right?
She did. She recalled the very confusing experience of hearing her non-Spanish speaking parents speak to her in Spanish in a dream. It showed the deep neurological shift that had occurred.
Wow. And staying within this framework of thinking in English, the source stresses a highly effective technique for vocabulary integration during idle time.
It's simple observation, but you transform it into a continuous learning exercise. You use your downtime standing in line at the coffee shop, waiting for the bus, commuting, to actively scan your environment.
And you look at common objects.
The lamppost, the fire hydrant, the curtain, the pothole.
And if you don't know the word for that object in English, you immediately note that knowledge gap.
Exactly. You make a mental note, or even better, a physical note of the object you couldn't name. Then you make a point of finding the correct word later that day.
This process transforms your environment into a perpetual classroom.
It does. By identifying the gap and immediately noting it, you create a powerful memory hook that ensures retention when you look up the word. It makes learning active, relevant, and tied to your physical location, which is exponentially more effective than just memorizing a list.
Okay, so we've prepared the content with tip 4, and we've prepared the mind with tip 6. Now we have to move out into the real world and make sure that preparation holds up under external pressure.
And this final section addresses the necessity of varied external exposure to truly prepare a learner for the English-speaking world, which is incredibly diverse.
Tip 7 is absolutely crucial here, the necessity of variety in native speakers. The research states it is so tempting to focus on just one clear, highly standardized accent like standard British received pronunciation or general American.
But that is a huge disservice to the learner.
Why? Why is focusing on a perfect accent a bad thing?
Because focusing on a linguistic monoculture creates fragility. You might perfect your ability to understand a very clear voice on an academic recording, but the moment you encounter a speaker with a regional dialect or someone whose first language has influenced their English,
your comprehension can just collapse entirely.
It collapses. This is the brain flexibility argument. The more widely varied the accents you hear, the more flexible your brain becomes at recognizing the underlying phones, the essential building blocks of the language, regardless of how the speaker's vocal characteristics might distort them.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure, let's take the T sound. In general American English, the T, in the middle of words like water or butter, is often pronounced as a flapped T. It sounds closer to a light D.
Waiter, beaters.
Right. But in Cockney English, that same T might be a glottal stop. They swallow the T, like where. If you only train your ear for the American D sound, you will struggle profoundly to decode the word water when the T is stopped or just gone.
And the source provides a brilliant anecdote using the expert's own mother to illustrate the danger of this narrow focus.
It's a perfect example. The expert's mother, who lives in an area where everyone speaks the exact same local accent, she struggles badly the moment she encounters diverse speakers, a thick Scottish accent, a rapid Irish accent, or English spoken by a native Spanish speaker.
To her, these accents sound fundamentally alien.
Because her brain hasn't learned to filter the noise. But the expert, having lived in different countries, taught students globally, worked with people from every continent, finds understanding varied accents relatively easy, despite sharing the same genetics and early upbringing.
The only difference is exposure and training.
That's it. She's trained her ear to separate the signal from the noise, recognizing the fundamental English sounds even when they're heavily modified by regional distortion. The risk of narrow focus is real. If you only listen to clear textbook voices, you will be utterly lost when confronted with someone from Glasgow or Australia or the deep south of America.
Global English demands flexibility, so we need to actively seek out this variety. Where does the source recommend listeners go to find this rich tapestry of voices?
Well, there are several practical avenues. First, group English classes. The students themselves often come from diverse linguistic backgrounds, so that guarantees varied accents.
Sir.
Second, and this is clever, expat meetups. Expats often organize social gatherings because they want to speak their native language or celebrate their culture. You can mix with these groups and practice English with people from dozens of different countries.
So you're guaranteed variation because you're getting English spoken with a Polish cadence or Hindi vowel shapes or a Brazilian rhythm.
Exactly. Then we move to digital resources. Platforms like Italki offer a free language partner feature for a tandem exchange.
Okay, what's a tandem exchange?
If you speak a language that a native English speaker wants to learn, you can swap time, say, 30 minutes of English conversation followed by 30 minutes of your native language. It's a free mutual benefit.
But the source wisely acknowledges that this only works if you speak a language that's in demand. Sometimes, if you come from a country where everyone wants to learn English, it can be hard to find a native speaker interested in your specific language for a trade.
And in that situation, the recommendation shifts to private tutors. The source specifically mentions that dedicated professional instruction on platforms like Italki often offers highly affordable per-hour prices. The value of dedicated, corrected conversation with a variety of teachers just can't be overstated.
Okay, so finally, what if you are in a truly isolated location where native speakers or even diverse groups are scarce? This is tip 8, finding support when native speakers are scarce.
If you cannot find native speakers, the research strongly advises finding like-minded people for practice and analysis. This moves the learning community entirely online.
And the expert strongly recommends online communities for this.
Very strongly, specifically calling out Facebook groups dedicated to English practice and forums like Reddit as fantastic.
Facebook groups are often undervalued as serious learning tools. How can a listener leverage these platforms for real progress?
These groups serve two primary, incredibly important functions. First, they're perfect for asking those specific, nuanced questions that a textbook will not answer, like, what's the social nuance of using the phrase fair enough?
Right. Things you only get from culture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Second, and more critically, they allow you to find people willing to analyze your speech.
So I could potentially post an anonymous audio recording and just ask for feedback.
Absolutely. There are subreddits like our Judge My Accent that are filled with users who provide analytical, community-driven feedback on pronunciation and rhythm. The expert even mentioned she anonymously responds to questions in some English groups herself.
Oh, wow.
Which just confirms that the community isn't only fellow learners, but often includes professionals and highly competent native speakers who are happy to offer assistance.
That eliminates the geographic barrier entirely. Even if you can't get that one-on-one native speaker interaction, you can still find expert feedback, community support, and analytical help just by posting a question or recording.
The core philosophy here is that practice must happen constantly, and exposure must be varied, regardless of where you live. The digital tools available today remove the last remaining barriers to practice. Hashtag OCHAG OTRO.
Wow. We have covered a massive amount of ground today. That was a truly comprehensive blueprint for moving a language skill from an academic exercise to a fluid automatic response.
Let's briefly review the 8 strategies we've handed you. We started with the foundational physical work, analyzing the tongue and the throat with tip 1.
Right.
Then we established that priority shift that enables real-time communication, focusing on pronunciation over grammar with tip 5.
We introduced the integrated automatic training methods, linking sound and sight through the consistent use of audiobooks, which was tip 2.
Enforcing the physical pace and flow of speech through those speed reading drills, tip 3.
We moved into the cognitive domain, preparing your conversational arsenal with rehearsed stories and monologues, tip 4.
The safety harness for nervousness.
Yes. And fundamentally changing your cognitive wiring by thinking in English with an internal narrator, tip 6.
And finally, we address the necessary external environment, the absolute need to expose your brain to a wide variety of native accents for true comprehension flexibility. That was tip 7.
And using online communities like Facebook and Reddit to ensure constant analytical support and practice partners, which was tip 8.
If we connect all this to the bigger picture, the overall goal isn't merely articulation or passing a test. It is the fundamental removal of that psychological barrier of self-consciousness.
That's the key.
By building the confidence that comes from clear physical delivery and having content prepared, you enable yourself to communicate effortlessly, turning a high-stress situation into a natural conversation.
And this brings us back to the most provocative thought of the day, something for you to mull over as you begin integrating these tips. We established that pronunciation is functionally more important than grammar. That was tip 5. And we noted that bad grammar is easier to correct than bad pronunciation, which relies heavily on physical mechanics. The lips, the tongue, the throat, from tip 1.
So this raises a profound question about language instruction globally. If learning to speak is building muscle memory and the physical skill is the bottleneck.
Does that mean the single most valuable hour a learner can spend, especially in those initial stages, is not studying conjugation tables or memorizing rules?
But meticulously watching and mimicking a native speaker's lips and tongue movements in a mirror until that muscle action is automatic.
It certainly suggests that if the foundation is physical clarity training, the biological machinery, and the primary goal is communication efficiency, then maybe we are, in many traditional language settings, teaching the language entirely backwards.
Until then, apply these 8 tips and start training your tongue.
We'll see you on the next deep dive.